Okay, so moving on to the base. When it comes to the base that comes with the model kit, let me show it to you. And I apologize for the camera because I gotta hold it while I videotape. It does come with a nice base. I'll take the plastic off for you. This is pretty cool. It's the dry dock. It's got the little panel lights. And what I was going to do originally, you know, I was going to, like most of the people on YouTube, paint it the way it looked on the box. I had wanted to remove the plastic panels and actually put LEDs in there for the real plastic panels. But all the amount of work that I'm putting into this model kit now, everything is like above and beyond. So why would the base just be the base from the box? So what I'm thinking is, I bought a 1/1000 scale of the refit. And to make a long story short, a future project, I'm going to use that. And I'm going to use this base as a base for that because I actually want to build the space dock around the model. It's going to have to be custom, but that's going to be another project, and this is not going to go to waste. But this is very solid. This is a really, really great base, and there's nothing wrong with this. It's just that all the work that I put into this, I want something a little bit extra. And I like to always plan things out. That's just how I do things. And one of the first plans or drafts that I had for the base was this. I would like little lights in the frame line around to kind of light the ship up when the ship isn't lit itself. You know, kind of like it was in dry dock. Got the measurements. I have the optics. I'm going to use is for the transparency. I put it's going to be maybe the movie poster from Star Trek the Motion Picture that I'm going to put in here. And the base is going to light up, and the logo of the Star Trek the Motion Picture will light up, and the outside of the frame. So this is one that I had come up with. Now, some of the wiring for the base plan, because without really realizing it, we're going to have a lot of buttons. Let me show you what I did when it comes to the buttons. The switches, of course, we're going to have the main power. And then, of course, we have to differentiate between warp mode and non-warp mode. So when she's on impulse, it'll be that orangey kind of yellow. And when she goes to warp, she's blue. So we got to have that. Then there's the base itself. You want to be able to put the base lights on and put them off separately so they're not always on. The window lights and the strobe and navigation lights, I was thinking that doesn't have to be two separate buttons. I was thinking to save myself the trouble of wiring and one less switch that I have to put in, maybe just go with one switch that would be for strobe navigation and window lights. And of course I'm going to have one that's going to be separate for the shuttle bay itself, because I'm going to put the shuttle bay doors on, and of course you're able to take them off, look inside, and that's when you want to activate the shuttle bay. A wiring schematic is going to be in a parallel circuit. And this is going to be the 12-volt power supply. It's going to be plugged in. I'm not going to use a battery. And in the base, they have the main power switch. And you can see the switches for miscellaneous things that I just described to you. So that would be the schematic for the wiring. I came up with a little bit more of a defined kind of base. because I'm going to be using the crown molding. I thought it looked really nice. And I've got these fancy kind of legs, because the Enterprise, to me anyway, is a very elegant lady. So I want something elegant for her to rest on. So I got the feet for the base, the crown molding. I'll do the inside of the frame. Now, in order to put the optics in, I'm going to come down 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to put a little groove, 1/8 of an inch, all the way around. So that way there, I can slide the sheet of optics in, and it'll lock into place, and I won't have to worry about it moving. The dimensions, I had to account for the 1/8 of an inch difference. So it'll be 9 7/8 by 7 7/8. And I came up with a little bit more of what I want the finished base to look like. A little more defined. It's got the molding that I picked out. The Star Trek, the motion picture logo. It's got the lights. I still have to figure out where I'm going to put the switches. But this is basically, I'm thinking what I would like. And I wanted to do this in black. And once that's finished, to just kind of dust the elegant part with just a bit with the airbrush of gold going all the way around. So I think that will look pretty nice. And that's where I'm at with the base. So the first thing I got to do is I'll make the base frame. And because this is 1 3/4 inch, I have to cut or rip the boards down to 1 3/4 so I can start to make the initial base frame. Once this is done, I'll tell you what I'll do to move on to the next step. Okay, so this is 1 3/4 inch, so I'm going to rip down some stock, 1 3/4 inches, and then I'm going to glue the pieces together to clamp them, so that when I cut them in diagonal pieces, they'll fit better. So I'm going to go ahead and rip down a few pieces, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I moistened each side, glued it into place, and then I clamped it. Pick it up and show you the clamps. And what I'll do is, when it's perfectly dry, I'll go over it again, sand it lightly, and it should be all set. I wish I had more clamps, because when you think you have enough, you need like 4 more. I got 4 of these, but I can't find 2 of them. Anyway, when it's all finished and set, I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, so I just took the clamps off. It's got a nice, strong bond. You can see it's nice and solid all the way down. I'm thinking that the decoration is going to go on the bottom part, so let me flip it over. And like I said, I'm going to put a nice gold finish with the airbrush on that design part, and the rest will be black. I'll be drilling in here to put lights in. But it's good and solid, and I'll be cutting it at an angle. So this piece, I'll get 2 pieces for the stand. I'll get a side and I'll get an end. Same thing with that one. So what I'm going to do now is, this one's all set. I'm going to use the Gorilla Glue again. I'm going to moisten the wood, and I'm going to do that side. I'll show you guys what that looks like when it's all clamped up. Alright, so I just moistened each side. I put a bit of glue in, and I clamped it. And the glue itself, the Gorilla Glue anyway, is going to expand. So it's good to have a little bit come out of the cracks. And then you can just slice it off. Or in this case, you know, sand it off. But the other one is all set. And I'll show you what this one looks like when it's ready to take the clamps off. Alright, so I took off the clamps and they had a chance to cure. Now the pieces are all set. They're all set to start forming the walls of the stand base. Alright, so I went ahead and I marked it off. Let me show you the plans because I measured it out. And removing 1/8 of an inch off both sides would make the long side 9 3/4 and the shorter side 7 3/4. So I went ahead, I marked them off, and I used the 45. What I'll do is now I'll take it to the table saw and cut out the pieces. Okay, so I cut out the pieces and I fit it together really loosely just to make sure that the general shape is okay. And what I did was, like I told you guys I was going to do, I went 1/4 of an inch and I went 1/8 of an inch deep. That way there I can put the plastic piece into the groove and that'll fit all the way around. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to gently shave, sand the pieces to make sure they fit together nice and square, and I'm going to dry fit the plastic sheet in. Alright, so I dry fit the pieces together, and I'm probably going to have to go a little deeper than 1/8 on this side for the plastic to fit and bring everything together, so I'll probably go 2/8. Then I'll dry fit everything, and I'll probably put 2 pieces together, square it off, and then leave it, and then put the other 2, and then I can put the halves together when it's all nice and square. Alright, doing that helped a little bit. As you can see, everything is coming together, fitting together a little more squarely. Still have some fine tuning to do, removing old material, sanding, cutting out some stuff, and then gluing the halves into place. But it's starting to take shape. Okay, so I got my corner clamp in. I was hoping this to be a little bit higher, but we'll see how it works. I'm going to clamp the corners. I'm going to use the Gorilla Glue, and per the instructions, I moistened the ends because the moisture helps the glue to cure. So I'll position it, I'll square it off, and I'll clamp it. And I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's ready to be unclamped. Okay, so it's been clamped, and I'm about to unclamp it, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. So I unclamped it, and one of the things that I noticed right away is that it's off a little bit on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it in with wood putty, and then sand it down smooth. It's probably due to the fact that the corner wasn't very big. I thought when I ordered it, I thought that these might be higher, but they're not very high. I should have had 2 of them, one for the top and one for the bottom. But I only have one. Anyway, we can go ahead and we can check the squarage. We're going to take the optics and we're going to try to put it in. You can see that goes kind of, fits right in pretty nicely. So that's done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clamp the other side. We're going to glue the other side and clamp it, and I'll show you what that looks like. One thing I figured would be a good idea is before it's set, I wanted to make sure that the optics would slide in and that it was wide enough and it would be even. So just to make sure, and it was off a little bit, so it's a good thing. So now I'll show it to you when it's all dry. Okay, so I took the clamp off. You can see it's good and solid. Like I said, I'm going to fill in the areas with wood putty, and then it'll be sanded. You want to check to see how square it is. So I'm going to take the optics. Let me see if I can do it with one hand. Put it in on one side. Come on now. Alright, let me do it. I'm going to put it in and then show you. Alright, sorry about that. But being able to push it in. It's nice and square. And the last piece, there'll be some trimming, but it'll go into place, and I got to trim a little more off the sides to make it perfect. But before I can do that, I got to work on my design. Like I showed you guys in my plans, I want to do the Star Trek the Motion Picture like a poster, and I want it to be lit up. Then there'll be the pole to hold the ship, and I'm going to have to put the switches behind the pole. So before I can put on the last piece, what I need to do is I'm going to drill out the lights, the holes for the lights. There's going to be 2 at the ends and 3 on the sides. That way there, when the base is on, the ship can be off and it can still illuminate the ship. And I'm going to take the optics out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scan it into the computer to get an exact size. And then I'm going to kind of make a space background, and I'll do the logo, and I'll place it where I want it to go. And then I'll print that out. And I'm probably going to print that out on some transparent paper, or I got a few ideas for that. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan the optics in and start working on the design. Okay, here's what I did. I scanned in the optics, and I'm going to use the shape. The actual shape is kind of a template and a guideline, so I can put the things that I want on the design of the base. So what I did was I took Star Trek the Motion Picture, I scanned in the DVD, so I have like the movie poster, and I put some space in the background. So let me show you. That's what it's going to look like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print that out, and hopefully it's going to look good. Let me show you what I'm going to print it on. I'm going to print it on the transparency film. It's going to be the size of paper, and I'm going to put it on the best quality, and I'm going to print it out, and I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's printed. Alright, so it just printed out, and I want to show you guys what it looks like. And it looks pretty cool. It's showing the lamp in the background, but you can get a gist of what the logo is going to look like. That's how I got it set up. So it just come out of the printer, so I'm going to let it dry right now. And I'll show you what it looks like when I place it into the stand itself, or the base. Alright, I had a chance to dry. But you got to be careful handling this because it's still, it could still smudge. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to put it behind the optics. Alright, so what I did was I peeled off the back of the optics, and I kind of put the film up against the back of it. It's got a good surface that it sticks to. Just don't smudge it, because once the ink dries, it's still kind of, well, I don't know how to put it, like grainy almost, and it's very easy to smudge. But this is what it looks like. I show it through the light. I apologize for the label, but that'll come off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue the final piece on and clamp the corners, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's all glued into place. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of an update. I took the clamp off. It's all nice and dry, and it's all nice and solid. I got the Gorilla Glue on the joints, but I didn't want to take a chance because there's no screws. It's only the glue holding it. So what I did was, let me show you real quick. I was going to use finished screws, but they're too long and they're too wide. So I'm sure everybody has this bag or a drawer where they have all kinds of extra tools and screws and wire nuts and things like that. Anyway, I took a 1/4-inch drill bit and I made a small hole at an angle, and I took one of the small screws and I just drove it in. I drove it in at an angle, so it's going diagonally, and it's just giving a little bit of reinforcement. And then I can just fill in the hole with the wood putty. Just enough to say that, you know, there's a little bit of extra strength there. As you can see, I put in the film, so our graphics are all set. It'll look a lot better when the optics is off, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut 1/2-inch plywood, and I'm going to make 2 layers. 1/4-inch plywood, and I'm going to cut 2 layers. The first layer is going to go in, and there's going to be like a little opening cut in for the light, for the movie poster. The second layer will go on top, and that's going to reinforce not only the frame, but it's going to reinforce the small pole that's going to go in and support the ship right about there. And all the switches will go behind that, and the movie poster will be lit. So the next step is doing those pieces and fitting them into place and gluing them. And then we can think about either painting or wiring, because I still want to put the LEDs in the sides of the frame, and put the switches in. And of course, the movie poster is going to be lit. So once I get the pieces cut out to put in the bottom, I'll show you what they look like. Alright, just a quick little update. I went ahead and I did the other side. just to get the screws in, just so to give it a little bit of extra strength. And with that being done, I'll go ahead and then I'll do the inserts. Alright, so the piece that I cut down is just a little bit too thick. And I don't want to force this in there. I do want it to be snug though. I don't want it to be rattling around. But it's a little too tight, and I don't want to force it in because that'll put extra pressure on the seams. So I'm going to rip it down just a bit on the table saw. Alright, so it took a bunch of, well, several more trips and shaving ever so slightly amounts off to get it to fit inside. Again, I didn't want it where it was rattling around, but I want it snug, so it'll be strong. Remember, this is what's going to be supporting the rod. The ship, all the weight is going to be in here. This thing already is very heavy. So with this being done, I traced out a template for the place that's going to be illuminated on the front. I put it up to the light, and this is the area that the poster is going to be shown, and that's the area that I want to be lit. So I got a template, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace the template onto this piece of wood, and I'm going to use the jigsaw, and I'm going to cut out the area. Alright, let me give you an update on what I did. I drilled holes in the four corners, then I took a jigsaw and I cut out the opening from the template. And what I did was I put electrical tape around the corners to kind of round them off and to kind of smooth everything out. There are sections where I did not put electrical tape, and I'm going to hot glue the LED lights into place. So I want them to stick to the wood. You know, it's possible that the tape would come off, so that's the update. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to secure this inside the base frame. Alright, let me give you a little bit of an update what I've been doing. I put the bottom piece in. Incidentally, instead of using 1/4 inch plywood and gluing them together to make a 1/2 inch, I went ahead and I used this piece of material is 1/2 inch. So I glued it into place, and then I used a 1/4 inch drill bit, just enough for the head to fit, and then I drove sheetrock screw, well, not sheetrock, but I drove screws into the frame to secure this. Because remember, the ship is going to be on here. The rod is going to go right about there, and then the 6 switches are going to go behind it. When I was doing that, just a little bit of a crack that showed up on this corner, and let me show you what I'm using. Sorry about that. I'm using the wood putty, Minwax, and it's sandable, so that's why I got it, and it takes a real long time to dry. I put it on yesterday and it's still kind of malleable. So there's that. I'll show you the other side just a little bit. It'll sand out smooth, and once that's done, I can think about sanding the whole thing down and putting the legs on. Okay, so what I did was I wired the switch because I just wanted to make sure that it was going to work. So I just temporarily put the wires attached to the switch. And again, it's going to go from warp mode to impulse. And the LED on the switch is going to be lit constantly as soon as the main power goes on, because this is going to stay on. So it's going to switch in between warp mode and impulse mode. So you got impulse and then you got warp. And I'm going to attach the same LEDs from the crystals on top of the saucer section that are going to change to go from warp mode to impulse mode. So that's all set. The base is getting ready to go, and pretty soon I'll be wiring it. So I just want to make sure that everything is going to be working, and the wiring will be correct. And I'm going to put up the wiring schematics in my notes, and I'll show you guys how I'm wiring everything. One more time. Warp mode. Okay, so to give you a bit of an update, all of the wood filler that I put in the corners, I sanded down, and it's smooth to the touch. It may not look smooth the way the light is picking up the cracks, but it's smooth to the touch. So that's all set. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and we're going to put the legs on. Now for the legs, let me just put it over here for you guys. I had gone to Lowe's and I had gotten these little pieces. They're little corner piece legs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them down, cut them all the same length, and then I'm going to glue them. And once that's all set, I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll be able to start priming it. Alright, so I'm going to go about approximately 1.5 inches above the bottom of the base, or the foot, and I'm going to cut them on the table saw, and I'll show you what they look like when they're ready to be glued on the bottom. Alright, so I loosely put them into place, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the Gorilla Glue and I'm going to glue them into place. And when it's drying, I'm going to put it the way it's supposed to be, with all the weight, with these facing down, just so anything that's uneven, the glue will take care of. So let me glue them into place and I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, so what I did was I wet the wood a little bit, just a little bit of water, to help the glue to cure, and I put the feet into position and I flipped it over, and now I'm going to wait for them to dry. And when it's dry, I'll show you what it looks like when it's all set. Well, not all set, but ready to move on to the next step. Alright, so the legs are all set. The glue had a chance to cure. Let me show you what it looks like really quick. What I'm going to do now is we're ready to start drilling the holes where the LED lights are going to go around the frame. So I'm going to have to mark it off, because I'm going to have to mark it on the top, on the bottom, so I can mark it on the side. Because what I want to do is I don't want it just coming out the bottom. That's going to be messy. I want it to come out the side. That'll be neater. So it's not going to be showing when it's standing up. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to measure it out, and I'm going to mark the areas, and then I'm going to drill. Alright, so I drilled the holes. You can see all the markings. I drilled where the markings were on the top and on the bottoms. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 5mm clear white bulbs in. And the way I did it with the angle was that I didn't want it coming out the bottom of the base, so rather coming out the side would be a lot easier, so it won't show as much. So I'm going to go through each hole, and I'm going to make sure that I can pass the wire for the bulb through. And then when that's done, we can move on to the priming. Okay, so I fed the wire in through the top, just enough to get the bulb to stay flush with the surface. I ran it through the bottom. And what I'm going to do is, when I do it for real, I'm going to hot glue the inside, just so it stays in place. I'm not going to do it now. In fact, I'm going to go around and I'm going to make sure I can pass the wire through all of the holes. And then I'm going to remove them, because I'm not going to put them in permanently now, because I still have to prime. And we'll move on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on through the others and make sure they all fit. Alright, so I put a very, very light coat on just to get the first layer coated. And the problem I'm having right now is I live in New England, and it wouldn't be so bad because the sun is out, but the wind keeps blowing the paper into the base. I don't want the paper to stick to it. So what I'm going to have to figure out how to do is do it really, really thin coats at a time until I can build up the base. But that's where we are right now, so I'm going to keep putting thin coats on, and hopefully I won't have to try to do it in the house again. So I'll give you an update soon. Alright, so I've been putting the primer on in the garage, because it wasn't really that good condition-wise outside. Do the underneath. And I just put one more little application of putty. I'm going to put 2 more coats, one on the top and one on the bottom. And after that, I'm going to sand it down so it's nice and smooth, and then it'll be ready for the finish coat. Alright, so I moved it inside. I was painting it in the garage and letting it dry in the cellar. It was a little bit better. And it was too windy outside and too wet and too cold. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go up, give it a good sanding, and then we'll be ready to put the finish coat on. Alright, so I sanded it down, and I just gave it its first coat. I apologize for the light down here, but there's not a lot of really good light. But that's coat number 1. It's been sanded, and this is the finish coat. I'll do the underside. When this is dry, I'll flip it over, and I'll put a light coat on top to start it off. Okay, so what I did was I put what I think is going to be the last coat of the finish paint on the top and on the sides. But because I've been painting in the garage, I don't have the light like I would outside. Maybe I'll do one final go over just to make sure there are no, white spots or areas where the primer is showing through. And pretty much that's all set. I'm going to let that dry because it's still wet. Maybe I should put one more coat underneath. I'll probably do that. And when it's all dry, I'll take it up into the light, and then I'll see the spots that I need touch up, and I'll see how it looks. Alright, so I put a couple of coats on the top and on the bottom. You can see everything is nicely covered. Corners, everything's nice and sharp. You know, originally I had wanted to do gold along the bottom, but the way it looks, you know what, I think I like it just black. I think it looks good. It's nice and solid. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run a razor along the bottom of the inside, and then I'll be able to take off the protective coating, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I removed the protective film, and one problem that I did not realize, ladies and gentlemen, yet one more screw up on my part. Another mistake, and this one is the fact that I didn't anticipate that there would be debris that would get in between the plastic and the film that I printed out. So I don't know how I'm going to do that, because the backside is all solid wood, 1/2 inch wood that I put in to reinforce it. This is going to be where the lighting strip is going to be to illuminate the logo, and I will fabricate a cover and I'll screw it on so that will be protected. But you can see the rest of it. It's all nice and finished painted. It's looking pretty decent. It even has the logo. You can see it's going to light nicely. There are areas where, again, another mistake that I did, the plastic kind of got melted by the paint and it ate through. So, you know, mistakes all over the place. So I'm going to figure out what I can do. If not, I just have to live with that. But that's basically the construction and the fabrication of this base. It's all nice and finished, painted, and ready to move on. So what we're going to do now is, that concludes part 1, the complete construction of it. And we're going to move on to part 2 of the video, which is going to be the wiring and bringing it to life. So until that video comes out, will be pretty soon. I thank you for watching this video, and live long and prosper.